The Steelers Daily. I'm your host, Deke, and we got a lot to talk about today in regards to the Steelers world, the Steelers verse, because we got some combine meetings to go over. Steelers met with some big name players at important positions. We also got some new trade rumors, some guys that may be on the block that could be of Steelers' interest that we need to discuss, and then more quarterback information, latest reports, latest updates there. And then we're going to start off today's show real briefly because the NFLPA did their yearly report card where they have players from each team answer surveys, do polls unanimously, and NFLPA gives out a report card for each team. So we're going to start off the show reacting to what the Steelers got. And it wasn't too hot. The Steelers' grades in this whole yearly NFLPA thing haven't been really good for the last like 2 or 3 years. I can't even remember when they first started this, but I think last year they were like bottom half. I think they were like 28th or something like that, and that's what they are this year, actually too. Yeah, 28th. Last 2 years, I think it was 2023. They were like 21st or 22nd, and I can't even remember when they started it. But recently, the Steelers haven't been doing so hot on these NFLPA yearly report cards, and you can see the breakdown here. The overall rankings 28th, as I mentioned, but the categories that it's all based off, it's treatment of families, food, dining area, nutritionist / dietitian, locker room, training staff, weight room, strength coaches, team travel, head coach, and then overall ownership. But I guess the big talking points here would have to be head coach and ownership, right? Head coach, Tomlin is the shining light on our grades here. 95% of Steeler players believe Mike Tomlin is efficient with their time, a rank that lands him 15 out of 32. And that's the thing. I don't know exactly how they divvied up these grades and how they weighted it right there, because if you're going off of that statistic right there, 95% of Steeler players, I'm reading this straight from NFLPA.com, 95% of Steeler players believe their head coach Tomlin is efficient with their time, a rank 15 out of 32. Okay. 15 out of 32, but then they also say players feel like Tomlin is moderately receptive to locker room feedback on the team's needs, ranking him 15 out of 32 head coaches in the league. So what else are they grading Tomlin off of? Because right there we got two factors that would rate it half, rate it 15 out of 32, or I guess a little bit above half. But overall, he lands 7 out of 32, 7th out of 32, gets an A. Yeah, not too surprising. Tomlin's done good on these NFLPA report cards consistently. He's been the shining light, it seems, whenever the Steelers get their grades here. And a lot of players want to play for Coach T. We know he's a good coach. We've talked about this. Our complaint is we need to get over the hump. We need to get back into contention status. And it seems like we haven't really been able to do that with Tomlin at the helm over the last decade. And there's not much hope. There's not much direction or vision going forward unless we make some significant changes this offseason. So we got to wait and see on that. But I think most fans hit their breaking point with Coach T being the coach after this wild card loss. And if there was ever a time to move on from him, it would have been this January. It would have been, after we suffered that loss to the Ravens. But he's still here. He's still a good coach. We'll see what happens. I mean, he needs to change his approaches for sure. Some philosophical stuff needs to change going forward. But still, no denying players want to play for Coach T. Still does his job at a pretty decent level. So there's that. Ownership, Art Rooney getting a D, ranking 28th out of 32. The reason being, a few of the reasons here, Art Rooney II's average rating for perceived willingness to invest in facilities is a 6 out of 10 from Steeler players, a ranking that's 30th out of 32 owners. Players fear Rooney slightly contributes to a positive team culture, a rank that is 25 out of 32. Players feel like Rooney is committed to building a competitive team, a rank of 22 out of 32 NFL owners. Man, I don't know. I'll be honest. Like, I think the stuff with ownership here, Rooney getting D, it's a little bit of a stretch. I mean, I guess they're getting this straight from the players, but Art Rooney compared to all these other owners in the league, he's typically in the top half, man. Like I get to hear, I've heard from players directly. I used to do a podcast with Arthur. He talked about Art Rooney and how much he cared about the team, how much he cared about the player, all that stuff. Like he's one of the better owners in the league. You don't get the type of stuff that you get from Rooney elsewhere that easily. So I take man, because he's been honestly ownership and some of these other grades like nutritionist, dietitianist, locker room, training room, weight room, the facilities, like ownership in the facilities, they've been grading poorly in this survey, in this whole report, NFLPA report card consistently over the last few years. And I said it last year. I take it with a grain of salt because I actually do think Rooney's a decent owner. Now, yes, could he be better? I'm sure. Could the facilities be better? I'm sure. But there also is a little bit of a cap on what we can do with our facilities, the locker room, and all that because we do share the space with Pitt. So that's a part of it. And when Rooney was asked about this NFLPA thing, he said, it doesn't get presented to us. It gets presented to the media. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a media opportunity for the players association as opposed to serious effort at constructive criticism. Rooney has also consistently pushed back against this report card, citing he has an open door policy for players to bring their concerns, noting that he hasn't heard critiques from players. So yeah, man, I don't know. Outside of Rooney upgrading the facilities, like I don't know what else are you really asking of him to do as it pertains to building up your work environment? And when it comes to facilities, when it comes to that type of stuff, is that the thing that's getting us over the hump? Is that the thing that's getting us from 10-7 to 12-5 and being in Super Bowl contention? No. Now, this is an NFLPA thing. This is like a players thing. This is them talking about their work environment. You know, this is where they go to work on a day in, day out basis. So that's from a fan's perspective. I mean, I'm not stressing about this that much at all. Because I don't think any of this stuff changes our record, changes, what our status is as a team going forward and our attempt to get back to being Super Bowl contenders. I don't think this changes any of that. Like, if our locker room was a little bit better, if our training room was a little bit better, is that getting us to be in the top seed in the AFC? No, it's just not. It's flat out not. Like, whenever you sign up to play football for the Steelers, like you're there to play football. It's not necessarily about the training room, the locker room, the facilities, all that. Now, could they be better? Yeah, for sure. And this is kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with some of the critiques about the Steelers organization over these last couple of years and how we do need to get up with the modern times. And specifically, we've been talking about, like, from an offense, defensive standpoint of philosophy, the coordinators, the play calling, the stuff we see on the field on Sundays. But I think this can go hand in hand with that, right? And I don't think Rooney and the Steelers organization just looks at this stuff and like completely overlooks it. Like he did bring up that he does have an open door policy. He preferred to get the critiques from the players directly, and that some of this is just, the NFLPA using it as a meeting opportunity. But I mean, he still takes note of this, because if he didn't, the treatment of families grade wouldn't have went up, because last year it was like an F. It was like an F or an F minus. It went up to a C minus. And if they didn't take the criticism seriously, the grade wouldn't have improved. And I think part of that grade improving is the Steelers did provide a daycare, and that's one of the things that was lacking in that category over the last couple of years. So that they included a daycare, and there you go. A little bit of improvement of the treatment of families grade right there. But not an improvement overall. We're still 28th out of 32 teams. But again, this, like, I don't know. In a way, I'm kind of with Rooney on this in terms of, like, this makes headlines. It's something for us to talk about. But really, is this the be all end all for the status of the Steelers organization right now? No, far from it. Definitely far from it. Because if you look at, I think the Eagles ranked like 22 out of 32. The Chiefs ranked really poorly last year. Weren't they like last year? The Chiefs, 3-time Super Bowl champions over the last like 5 or 6 years. They were last. Like, I think their owner ranked poorly too. Is the owner really that bad? So I don't know. This is it is what it is. I don't think this is like that big of a deal or anything. If you're mad at the Steelers organization, if you're mad at Rooney, if you're mad at the state of the Steelers right now, you're just going to use this as extra fuel for your anger. And don't get me wrong, I'm not thrilled with how we've been doing on the field the last decade. Like, I've talked about that many times on these shows recently, but this isn't really impacting that one way or another either. Now, yeah, of course, if we can improve things, sure, improve things. Why not? I'm not saying like stay stuck in the 1970s, stay stuck in the 1960s with our facilities and some other things we do behind the scenes, but like, I don't know. This ain't that big of a deal. We got a few more things to talk. Like I said, we got a jam-packed show here. That was just the intro. I didn't really want to spend that much time on that, but it is what it is. Oh, also the strength coach. Real quick, going back to that. The strength coach, he scored a C-, which ranked 32 out of the other 32 teams last. No surprise, given that Russell Wilson got that calf injury from pushing a sled. But all right, let's move to quarterback news, because we got a smorgasbord of information related to that recently, and the pendulum swinging back into Fields' favor, it seems. So we got one from Mark Cabolu. We got another report from Adam Schefter, one from Aditi, and then a little wrinkle at the end from Pete Carroll. He answered a question about Russell Wilson and if he's still in contact with his former quarterback. So we'll kind of just run through these reports and then react to them at the end. So Mark Caboli says Justin Fields is the guy they want. Steelers Insider offers important QB update. I think they're waiting to see what kind of answer they get from Fields, Caboli said via 93.7 The Fan on Wednesday. And while they wait for him, they got to pretend. I say pretend like they're interested in everybody just in case Justin Fields does not want to come here or gets a better offer somewhere else. I think it's always been Justin. I think he's our number one priority, but you can't put all your eggs in your basket. Justin Fields is the guy that they want. Okay, Caboli's been saying that. He hasn't really pivoted off that. He has said recently, though, that he thinks Justin Fields may get a better offer elsewhere, which would open up the door for Russ coming back. But he also thinks that the Steelers are prioritizing Justin Fields as their number one option. Next, let's get to Adam Schefter's take on the situation. He says, well, they're interested in talking to both, and they have an interest in bringing back one. And we'll see which deal they're able to hammer out here before the start of the new league year on Wednesday, March 12th. But they're already at work talking to Russ about a new deal, talking to Justin Fields about a new deal. And I think that obviously they've been pretty clear that they want some continuity. They'd like to bring back one. I think each quarterback has some support within the organization, but they're working on getting one of those quarterbacks done. Again, goes hand in hand with what we've been hearing for the last 3-4 weeks. Aditi, what she thinks goes even furthermore in line with what Caboli was saying. And that is, everything I've been told from people in the building is that Russell Wilson will not be re-signing with the Steelers. So for the Fields people out there like me, this is good news. Like I said, the pendulum seems to be swinging in Fields' favor, pointing in that direction. Adam Schefter, not as detailed in his report, that it more just Steelers are talking to both. They're interested in having continuity. They're interested in having at least one of those two back. Doesn't have a sway one way or another. But the people that are reporting more locally, Aditi and Caboli, are saying Fields is the guy. Fields is definitely the guy. That's who the Steelers want. And we got something from Pete Carroll that makes me hope at least Russell Wilson could be looking elsewhere, because he was asked at the Combine about how much he still is in communication with his former quarterback from the Seattle days. He says, you might be surprised at how much we all communicate, all the guys from back in the day. We still communicate and watch each other and share stories and the whole thing. So it's been really fun to watch the guys. Maybe that's a sign that he'd be willing to team up with Russell Wilson again. That's my hope. Maybe it's an open door for Russ to go to Vegas. That's what I'm hoping. I mean, because once Pete Carroll was initially hired down in Vegas, I know everyone was putting 2 and 2 together there. But then you thought about it more, and you were like, man, Russell Wilson kind of did him dirty. Did Pete Carroll dirty back in Seattle, because there was the reports, the rumors that Russ was trying to get Pete Carroll fired. And then obviously we have seen over the last 2 or 3 years that they have made up. They have a decent relationship, and you just heard what Pete Carroll said there. So that makes you think that, yeah, maybe there could be some reconciliation. But I don't know. If I'm Pete Carroll, I could also completely understand not wanting to go back to Russ. You got this new opportunity, new head coach, new team. You just want a fresh start. You don't want to go back to that. And who's to say that Russ wouldn't maybe pull some other stuff like that again? Because we're seeing with Russ here, like these weird reports randomly leaking, and they're obviously from Russ's camp. This is the drama. This is some of that stuff that is discussed when you're talking about having Russell Wilson be the quarterback for your team. What was it? The report that came out after we beat the Bengals and put up 40 points, Arthur Smith all of a sudden took the reins off of Russ and wouldn't let him audible, wouldn't let him call certain plays. It's like common sense. That doesn't even add up at all. Like what? And then we did get reports that rebuked that. They were more pro Arthur Smith reports that were like, yeah, that didn't exactly happen. This is obviously coming from Russ's camp. This is like a last-ditch effort to try to get the positive PR in his direction. He really wants to be a Steeler, wants to come back to Pittsburgh. So this is him trying to curry some favor back with Steeler people. So I don't know, man. Like I'm just hoping it's Fields. Like obviously the majority of these reports here that I just read are pointing towards Fields being back and the Steelers having him as their number one priority. But again, I say if we can't get Fields, Russ isn't the next best option. We need to look outside of the organization. Go trade for Stafford. Go sign Aaron Rodgers before you bring back Russ. And that's the weird thing too with Kaboli and what he said. Like the Steelers don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. They don't want to be doing too much here with Fields. Why not? Like if Fields is your guy, go all in. Like stop playing this. Stop straddling the fence here. If Fields is your guy, and I say they pretend like they're interested in somebody else just in case Fields doesn't want to come here or gets a better offer somewhere else. I think it's always been Justin. Like why not just say, Fields, you're our guy. We're going to give you the opportunity. Here's the offer. Maybe they could say too, like, see what other offers are out there and then come back to us. And let's see if we can match. Let's see if we can get close. Obviously, we both want continuity. We both don't want to just bring in a whole new quarterback because, I mean, the Steelers could do right by looking outside, but from everything we're hearing, the Steelers either want Fields or Russ back, right? They want the guy. They want a guy that was on the roster last year. They want continuity. They want a guy that's been working with Arthur Smith, not just some new quarterback in here. That's at least what the Steelers are thinking. So it's like both sides want this, even if it's a little bit less than what Fields is getting out on the open market. Let's just make this work. Let's come to an agreement here. It's better for both parties to stay together. Clearly, both are interested. Both think it can be a good thing. Let's just get it done. Let's get it done. All right, couple more things. Let's go over some trades. Two names popped up. One is a familiar name, and the other one's a new one that could be gaining some Steelers interest here. First, let's start with the new name. Jaire Alexander is reportedly on the Packers trade block here. First tweet by Ian Rappaport says, the Packers have had trade conversations centered around star cornerback Jaire Alexander, and they're open to moving him for the right price. Alexander, still just 28, a two-time Pro Bowler, is considered the most decorated cornerback available. Quote tweets it by saying, Jaire's contract, which was front-loaded, just has 2 years left and $37 million left. Very tradable. Brian Gutekunst says, we'll see when asked if Alexander will be on the team. We're working towards that, or we're working through that. He certainly could be, but we'll work through that as we go. Yeah, I would say Alexander is probably gone based off that response by the GM and the fact they have had open trade conversations surrounding him. And one of the Steelers' needs heading into this offseason, cornerback. We need a guy across from JPJ, especially since Dante Jackson is a free agent. So, yeah, Jaire Alexander should definitely be on our radar. Like some of those free agents that I mentioned in one of our shows from last week, it was DJ Reed, Byron Murphy, Carlton Davis. Who else? Shavarius Ward. So those guys are free agents. And I was talking about paying them 14, 15 million, maybe even 16 million a year. One of those guys, whoever it is, put them across from JPJ because we can afford it. We got a ton of cap space. We can upgrade our D-line. We can upgrade the receiver room. We could have our quarterback, and we could sign a solid corner this offseason with how much cap space we're going to have available. And, well, we do got to make some restructures. We probably do got to cut some players to get the cap space even higher. But this is all very feasible. If we want to get it done, we can get it done. So I think the same can be said with Jaire Alexander. If we're talking about 2 years and $37 million left, whatever it's going to take to get him, I don't know, maybe a third-round pick. Who knows what the draft pick is? But Jaire Alexander, out of those other cornerbacks that I mentioned who are free agents, Jaire Alexander is the best of that group, no doubt. He's still 28. Some of those other cornerbacks that I mentioned, they're 28 and older. So, yeah, Steelers should be looking into this. I'm assuming, though, if you trade for Alexander, you're giving him a new contract. That's probably what the tension is between Alexander and the Packers right now. He wants to have more years. He wants some added years, more guarantees to his contract. And the Packers at this point, with the contract that they just gave Jordan Love, with them paying Josh Jacobs, they're probably going to have to pay some of these receivers coming up. Yeah, maybe they're not as apt to give Alexander a big-time extension. Is what it is. I mean, sides grow apart, time changes things, and that's where the Packers and Alexander are at. Now, the other trade candidate we have talked about before, and it's Deebo Samuel. I think it's like official. We kind of knew this too a couple weeks ago when Deebo Samuel, his name was being floated out there in trade rumors that this was the moment that the 49ers, this was the offseason that they were actually going to trade him. This is just not a bunch of hearsay and fluff anymore. Just considering where Deebo is at his career, how things have played out last couple of years with the Niners, the injuries, some of the drama. He only has 1 year left on his contract. The Niners are going to trade him. I think we all knew this, but now we even got further confirmation. John Lynch at the Combine said he's asked for a fresh start, and I think we're going to honor that. Oh, man. Like, I'm open for a Deebo Samuel trade here. I am. We need that second receiver. It's just that, is Deebo Samuel the best fit? Considering his age, the injury history, all that. And he's a certain type of receiver, man. He's one of those like gadget type of receivers. Great run after catch, but isn't like the best route runner. Isn't the best like down the field threat. But it's like if you get him the ball in space, get him some drag routes, get him some crossers, he's definitely going to draw attention. And if you get him that ball, there's a chance he could take it to the house at any moment. Is that what we need? Now, I do think some of it is dependent on what we do at quarterback. If we bring back Fields, Deebo Samuel could be a legitimate option as that wide receiver too. Just because of his play style and how with Fields, we're going to be doing a run-heavy offense. So with Deebo, you could motion him. You could put him in the backfield. You could do a lot of like window dressing and having Deebo draw a ton of attention from the defense and then use him as a decoy. You could do some really cool things, especially if you have Fields as your quarterback. His legs are going to be a threat. And then combine that with the running backs. I don't mind it. I wouldn't mind a Deebo Samuel trade. I don't think it would cost much to get him at this point. I don't know if he's looking for an extension or if he's good on being like on a one and done with his new team, but it's intriguing if we go Fields. If we go with Russ, Deebo Samuel, no chance. I don't think Deebo Samuel works as much if you go pocket passer. If we go Russ, if we go Rodgers, Stafford, I'll pass on that. But Fields, definitely intriguing. Absolutely intriguing. Deebo Samuel to the Steelers if Fields is our quarterback. I think it could work. I do. As long as we get creative, as long as we lean into a Justin Fields tailored offense, I think it could work. Last thing, though, before we sign off here, let's go over these combine meetings because obviously scouting combines this week. Steelers have been taking some formal and informal meetings, but the formal are the ones that are more notable because you only get so many of them. You get a scarce amount of formal meetings, and yeah, they're a little bit more in depth than just informal. Hence the definition of formal versus informal, right? But shout out to Steelers Depot. They do a good job of reporting on this stuff year in and year out on who the Steelers are officially meeting with. And yeah, we got some obvious names, I think. Defensive line. We got guys that are going to be drafted in like probably the second or third round that got the formal meetings. Jordan Birch from Oregon, the two Texas guys, Broughton and Collins. Kenneth Grant from Michigan, he might be a first-round pick on the D-line. That's a guy we could really use, Kenneth Grant right there. If he's available, I wouldn't be opposed to taking him. Derek Harmon from Oregon, and then Shamar Turner from Texas A&M. All the other guys are informal. Those are guys that are going to be taken later in the draft. But the guys that were formal, like I said, the two guys from Oregon, the two guys from Texas, Kenneth Grant, Shamar Turner, those are guys that they're going to be taken in the top 3 rounds, defensive linemen. And we've talked about how pressing defensive line is a need for the Steelers after we got shellacked by the Ravens on the ground in that wild card game. So that's good. Good sign right there. Like that. Edge rushers, I don't really have any strong takeaways here because they're all informal. We don't really need edge rush help like that, given our top 3 of TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig. Linebacker. This one's interesting because we don't, on paper right now, we're not stressing about inside linebacker with Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson. They're going to be our top 2. And for the foreseeable future, it's not just for like 1 year. Peyton Wilson, we drafted him last year. Patrick Queen, we gave a decent contract to. He's still young and still has talent. But the one that's formal at the bottom, Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma. He's potentially going to be like a second or third round pick. He's one of like the top 4 or 5 off-ball linebackers. So, yeah, I'll tell you what, man. That would be interesting. It all depends on what we do in free agency because if we keep Cole Holcomb, if we bring back an Landon Roberts, there's no reason to draft linebacker that early. I think it'd be really stupid given that we just drafted Peyton Wilson last year and we have Patrick Queen on a decent contract. Like, where's the playing time going to come from? But also, you can't put anything past the Steelers when it comes to edge rushers and linebackers. Like, sometimes we'll just take one in the second round just to take one. Like, we don't need one, but hey, we're just going to do it. We need corner, we need receiver, we need all these other positions. But in Steelers, yeah, we're just going to take a linebacker because we're the Steelers. That's what we do. But he's one of those dudes. He's kind of like Peyton Wilson. If anything, he's a more physical version of Peyton Wilson. He's a better run stopper, I think, than Peyton Wilson coming out of Oklahoma. You watch his tape, man. Like, he's one of those dudes, like 6'3", 6'4", big bodied. Not terrible in coverage, but one of the new prototypes. One of the new archetypes. Athletic inside linebacker that can fly around, kind of do it all. So that's intriguing. He was the one formal meeting that we had at linebacker. Obviously, Carson Bruner, the last name, the connection to the Steelers. Mark Bruner was a former tight end back in the 90s, early 2000s here. And then running back, Ashton Jeanty and Ollie Gordon II. That's cool. Cool with me. Going back to Ashton Jeanty, remember I did the video surrounding him because Daniel Jeremiah had us taking him in the first round in his mock draft. I was like, man, I think it's too early. Yeah, we shouldn't be taking a running back in the first round. I think it's stupid. We shouldn't be doing it. But to have a meeting with Ashton Jeanty, arguably the best running back in this class, I think it's smart to do because we're presumably going to be taking running back in this upcoming draft. So maybe Jeanty falls. Maybe we do become that enamored with Jeanty and we take care of all of our other needs in free agency. And we say, you know what? We're going to go back to the running back well in the first round. Even though it didn't fully work out with Najee Harris, let's take Jeanty because Jeanty, I think he's a better running back than Najee coming out. No doubt about it. I'll at least give Jeanty that. But it's just, again, the thought of taking a running back in the first round and how valuable that position is to an offense and how much impact it has on a team winning games. That's where I question that selection. And two, with how stacked this running back class is, you can arguably get a guy in the second or third round that's as good as an Ashton Jeanty. So why spend a first round pick on the running back from Boise State when you can get maybe an Ollie Gordon, and you might be able to get an Ollie Gordon in the fourth round, man. He was presumably like the number one running back coming into this college football season, but he had a down year, so he could be a steal. Yeah, watch out for him. But there's still like probably about 10 running backs that are being categorized above an Ollie Gordon. There's a lot of good running backs in this class. So, yeah, I'm good with those combine meetings. There's going to be more combine meetings coming up as the week goes on, but that's just the update for now. But that's it for today's show. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be back tomorrow, 6 p.m. as always. Stay chilling. Here we go, Steelers. Peace.